from our opening ceremony, you'll know that this workshop is mainly going to be looking at the microbit as well as Microsoft MakeCod, which is how you will make software for your microbit virtual computer, and how then we move on to creating a physical attachment and engineering an attachment that complements your program. If by any chance you missed the opening ceremony, don't worry. Just like this workshop, it has been recorded and will be made available to you later today or tomorrow latest. And you can find these in our website as well as our Discord server. Okay, so let's get started. So before I introduce our host today, I just want to remind you guys of some resources that you have available. And all of these things can be found again in our website, as well as our Discord link. And I'm sure some members of our staff will be able to share those with you. But again, everything that you need could be found at either of these two sites. Okay, so today with us is Andrew McDonald, who is going to be the host that's going to be leading this workshop for us today. And in preparation for this, it's important to note that Andrew is a science teacher with a side passion for computer science and robotics. He's also been educated in Ottawa with his master's in medical physics and worked in the cancer clinic before changing his career to become a teacher. He has a passion for teaching and wants to get people interested in how things work. As an educator, he enjoys fostering the maker mindset to teachers and students alike. And this has brought him opportunities to become an ambassador for various educational technologies. Between teaching and these opportunities, he's had a chance to explore various parts of the world, and he's looking forward to helping others explore it and change the world with technology. And with that said, I want to then introduce Andrew and give the floor over to him.
All right, thanks very much for that wonderful introduction. I didn't know I was going to have such a formal picture up there, but it's all right. I'm not that formal right now. Actually, I'll turn my video on. I don't have. I'm showing my microbits right now, but we'll. Yeah, you can see me, and I'm in my workshop, so that's why it's a little messy. It's a sign of a messy workshop is all right. So. All right, so what I'll do is I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to get right into it when I get a chance. You need to activate the screen sharing for me. Okay, thanks. We can edit that part out. And my computer's like a little bit laggy sometimes, so hopefully we'll be fine. You'll have to patience is another thing we have to learn as well, is patience when we're trying to code stuff, patience when we're doing things. So all right, so hopefully we're up and running. Yeah, you can see I'm going to shut my video off so we can when I share my screen, you don't need to worry about that. And you don't need to look at me. It's more important what I'm talking about and what I'll show you in momentarily. So yeah, thank you very much for that kind introduction. I'm very interested in making stuff, building stuff. This morning, we actually built, my son and I built some things. He got we were at Disney a month or half an ago, and he got a lightsaber, which he was very excited about, and I was like, we got to make a sheath for it. So we had some old cardboard and we built a little sheath out of it. So yeah, sort of exciting. So it's, again, what can you build with stuff around you? And so when I was invited to speak here, I was super excited to have this opportunity. I'm super excited to see what creative, inspiring items you guys are going to come up with as well, folks. We're going to come up with. All right, let's go. Okay, so I would like to acknowledge that in the spirit of truth and reconciliation, I acknowledge that we're hosted today on the customary traditional lands of the Indigenous people of this territory. For myself, I'm coming to you from the Algonquin and Anishinaabe Nation, also known as the National Capital Region. And so for those of you that are in other places, I would encourage you to learn about the Indigenous First Nations and Métis and Inuit peoples of your region as well. So what are we going to talk about today? I'm going to do a little bit of an introduction to the microbit. I'm going to do a couple small projects together if you'd like to. If you don't have the opportunity to do that, because this is being recorded, you can come back later and do that. We're going to talk a little bit about the engineering design process, which is what I like to encourage, or what I want to showcase, or I wouldn't say ingrain, but make sure that the students are sort of thinking about that, because, you know, when you have this project and you're really passionate about it, it's awesome. But we also want to take the steps to really make sure that it you know, something awesome comes out of it. And so using this engineering design process can help you with that. It's more of a guide per se. And then I also wanted to show an example of a do your bit project that one of my students, or two of my students, made. And so just to give you again that sort of idea of, like, you know, that it's hopefully inspirational opportunity to think about that. So a little bit about me. Yep, there's a less formal picture with some various microbit fun stuff there. Oh, and that picture's flipped. Anyway, whatever, it looks good still. But yeah, there's lots of different other microbit stuff that you can get into. And but again, for this particular challenge, you don't need to have the physical microbit. You know, a project and those physical components are, you know, all that's really needed. But you know, for some of you that do move on to the next round, if I'm correct, I think you get a microbit as a potential prize. Please correct me if I'm wrong, though. I don't want to get everybody's hopes up on that one.
Yes, all our top 5 participants will be getting a physical microbit to give them the chance to then use it to present during the finalist event.
Right. Yeah. Thanks for that. Awesome. Yeah. So that's super, super cool. So what is a microbit? So some of you might have done a little bit of research beforehand, but for those of you that haven't, I wanted to showcase a microbit up on the screen here. And so and I'll show you in my video in a few moments here. But, you know, what's a microbit, and what you know, what are some of the things that it has on board? And so first of all, you'll see, so this is on the front on the left hand side. It's got 2 nice buttons, physical buttons, that you can press and do things with. It's got a 5x5 red LED matrix here. So you can use that to turn on, turn off, or scroll things across there, words, that sort of stuff. We also have a touch logo here. So just like the 2 physical buttons here, whereas like you actually have to physically press it down, this is more of a capacitive touch sensor, you can say, which you might say, well, what is that? Similar to your a smart phone or a tablet screen or a touch screen on a computer. You just have to touch it and it will activate, sort of thing. So it's not waiting for like a pressed or a pressed and released. It's just waiting for a touch. And these are, I'll try to use some of the words that you might see within the MakeCod platform when we're getting into coding of it. You'll also see now this these particular things, this touch logo and the microphone, are actually on the version 2. So I should say that there's 2 different types of the microbit. So version 1 and version 2. The biggest difference or physically to like tell the difference between them is when you look at them, you'll see that there's like an indent on the down on the bottom here, this sort of gold part. That helps for better connections. And so that's one way to really tell if you're dealing with the version 1 or version 2. I know some schools out there have lots of the version 1s. But again, you know, create your project dependent on, you know, what you want it to do, and don't limit yourself to like, oh, I don't have the version 1 or I don't have the version 2, whatever. You know, again, you might not have the physical microbit for this first round, but you do have your physical accessories, and so, you know, go for it. But those top 5 winners, correct me if I'm wrong, they do have access to they'll get the version 2 microbit, correct?
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah. So that means whatever things happen on the version 1 can still be, you know, it's sort of backwards compatible, I guess you can say, is that, you know, whatever you program for the version 1 works on version 2, but sort of not the other way around. Like there's no touch sensor on the version 1, but there is on the version 2. Anyway, so we have a microphone indicator, which means that it can sense sound, which is pretty cool. So the cool thing about the microbit is that ability to, you know, have outputs, so it can, you know, we can see things, we can hear things. It's got the speaker, but we can also have inputs as well, right? So we think about inputs and outputs on a computer. Well, this is just a very small microcomputer is what we often refer to it as. And so what does that mean in terms of some of the some of the outputs that we have? So a speaker, microphone, as well as the lights, and then some of the inputs. So a couple of the inputs that I've already talked about are, you know, these buttons, the 2 buttons and the touch sensor. We also have microphone, but some other cool things are this accelerometer and the compass. So it can sense the orientation. So again, thinking about your smartphone, when you flip it from sort of a horizontal to a vertical, or landscape to portrait, whatever you want to say, you know, the screen sort of flips, or the images on the screen flips, and it knows that. So similar to this, well, maybe not, you know, the flipping of the screen unless you program it to do that, but at least it knows its orientation. So if it's, you know, logo up or logo down, or if it's being dropped, or if you're tilting it towards the left or the right, whatever, those sorts of things. One thing that I won't really dive into today, but again, you know, there's things which, like, you know, again, expands the opportunities with it, is the radio antenna. So that means that it has Bluetooth and radio frequency connections. So it can communicate between something Bluetooth, like a smartphone or a tablet, or a computer, to the microbit, as well as from microbit to microbit. And so again, you know, when you start to think about your project and how you're going to go forward with that, there's definitely going to be opportunities for you to explore and go from there. And then last but not least are these connections. Well, I think that's last but not least, but I don't know. I'm sure there are other things that I haven't mentioned yet, but we'll, you know, it's a powerful little board with lots of stuff on there. So there is this edge connector. And so what does that mean? So that means that you can have things that are being input on there or output as well. And so you can have external sensors, as simple as as creating a circuit, or as complex as like a light sensor or a temperature sensor or something like that. And then in terms of outputs, we can have, you know, lights or motors or all sorts of other things. So lots of opportunities to explore with this. We're not going to be able to do those all today. We'll talk about a few things. I'll do maybe a few little demos and, you know, showcase a couple things that you might think about. Again, you know, you don't have to go to your, that specialty electronics store and buy all the crazy components. You can do stuff in your home with, again, depending on your project. And that's where we'll come back to the engineering design process to think about those things and, how we can use that in our projects. Yeah, let's do some programming. Actually, I was gonna showcase the microbit, but I don't think I need to. Yet anyway. Well, when we do some coding, we'll be able to do that together. I'll show it to you. So I am going to head over to MakeCod.microbit.org. If you wanted to follow along, then you're more than welcome to do that. Are we able to send something into their chat or not? Or I can make it bigger for them that they can see. So there's so MakeCod.microbit.org is the website. I'll give everybody about 30 seconds for that. And you're probably going to say it doesn't look exactly like yours, doesn't look exactly like mine. No, that's true. So I just popped back out so you can have a look at it. So this is sort of I'd say the gold standard. Oh, am I sharing the correct screen still? Like you can still see my MakeCod?
We can see the dashboard that we have all your projects, but we can't see like the block code.
Okay, yeah, that's good. Yeah, no, I just went full screen. I didn't know if I shared my window or my tab or my screen. So I just wanted to make sure that you can still see all of that. Great. Okay, so yeah, so all right, hopefully everybody's there or almost everybody's there. So yeah, so there is, like Eduardo mentioned, it's a dashboard with all of your previous projects that you've done. And for some of you that might be blank, that's okay. We're getting started. We're only going to go up from here. And then below that, we've got a bunch of tutorials. So we've got, how to do your name, dice, micro chat, and then some new tutorials for version 2. We've got some live coding demos that people have done, got some games. So lots of getting started in here. So definitely, if you want to explore more, for sure, check it out. There's some really interesting projects that you can get into. And if you're trying to learn a little bit more about some of the various sensors, there's also some of those here. Yeah, and I have some stuff on my website as well, or my YouTube channel, that if you're interested, you can head over there. But again, this is chock full of some great tutorials as well. But let's get coding. So we're going to start off with clicking new project, and like always, we should name this appropriately so that we can find it later, because once you start getting more and more and more projects in there, we want to make sure we can find it. So today we're part of the SRHacks, and we can, we're just going to do sort of an introductory thing with our name. So I'm just going to put name, and you'll sort of know that it's a good name or not if it gives you lots of hearts up here. If I just read it at SRHacks, it doesn't like it, or it doesn't like it as much. But once we get that more, so we click on create, and then we're going to get nice big into it. All right, so here we have the online coding platform. You'll see on the left-hand side when it loads that we have a simulator. So that simulator works just as well as the physical microbit as well. And the cool thing about it is when you get into some of the extensions or sensors and that sort of stuff, there's a simulator for those as well, which is really cool. In the middle here, we have all the code that we'll need. And so depending on the color of the code, it's sort of based on that different category. Each of these, we sort of call them drawers, have different categories. And so if you're looking at inputs, sort of pops open and you can have, different things. And you'll see here for the microbit version 2, some of them options down here. So that sound sensor or the microphone we were talking about, and that logo pressed is another option there. Music, LEDs, loops, and then there's some advanced stuff down here. Again, as you feel more and more comfortable, I would definitely encourage you to explore here, as well as, again, do some more of those tutorials to get yourself comfortable. And then once you know a little bit more about the microbit, you can see how, okay, this is what my idea is for my project. How can I put this into action type of thing? So for right now, we're just going to do some basic stuff. So we got basic. So again, basic is that, green, light blue. And we can just have it show us strings, or for example. And so show a string is some characters. And the way that we do that was just drag it. And if we drop it in this area here, it doesn't, you'll see that it's sort of gray, grayed hashed out sort of thing, this sort of diagonal lines on there. That means it's not going to function. And so we want to make sure that we get this into one of our blocks up here. And so we have our on start. So you can imagine that this will run on start. And in fact, this little section will only run once because it's run this code at the very beginning. It's sort of like that startup screen when you turn your computer on, or when you restart your phone, you have that little splash screen or whatever, depending on your phone, etc. Whereas this is forever. So this is always going to be happening. So I can have this show string and we can put a hello right here. And once I sort of drop it, the simulator will start and you can see it's scrolling across hello. And that's it. That's all it's going to do. So then I can say forever. I can have in this forever. Maybe I can put in I can put my name in here. Or I can put in SRHack and spell it correctly. This is the great thing about block coding as well, is that if you spell something wrong, it's usually just in the showing of the strings. Once you get into like text-based coding, you got to be really careful with the spelling of stuff. But for those of you that are interested in taking that one step further, or you're just interested about text-based coding, is up at the top here you see this blocks, and then there's JavaScript. You can just click on that and it will convert all of this into JavaScript. And so we can see basic.showString. Just make this bigger, sorry. So basic.showString, hello, and then basic.forever, there's a function, basic.showString SRHacks. And so we can sort of change in here, we can change in some of the stuff if we want to. But for right now, we'll just leave it like this. And if you're not interested in JavaScript, you can also check out Python as well. And so I think Python is a little bit easier of a text-based language to learn as your first text-based language. But if you're still very new with programming, blocks is the way to go, because then you don't have to worry about learning Python or JavaScript at the same time as understanding coding, stuff like that. But it's always fun to sort of go back and forth. And, if you're interested in coding and building and stuff like that, you can definitely go further with it. All right. So we have this on start, show string hello, and then forever show string SRHacks. And you'll see as I've been talking, this SRHacks is just moving along here, which is great. So but you know, let's do something a little bit more to this. Let's add a little bit more to this. So what I can do maybe when I touch one of the buttons, I can have it say something else. And so we can go into the input. So again, on button pressed, and now I can have on A, B, or A, B, or AB. So we got to do A, B together, sort of thing. Which on the simulator, there's like a little fake button that pops up right here. Was it here? Here. But on the actual microbit, when you do that, it'll be there. Actually, you know what? I didn't even do this. Before I go any further, let's put this on the real microbit. So again, you can see that it goes into a real microbit. But you know, again, for this particular project, you don't have to have the real microbit. But if you do, it's really fun to see that. So I'm going to turn my video on to show my microbit. Here is the microbit. And let's download it. So now I have connected it physically with a USB cable to my computer. And so I just need to connect it to it. So it's just making sure that I've connected it. And then it says, yep, that's the one. Now I should be able to click download. And you should see it. It's still downloading. Sort of the program's gotta connect on my computer. And then you'll see on the back here, there's like a little flashing light. And then it will, so it's still flashing. Still flashing. Let's go, look, little computer that could. It's taking a little while. Could take a little while just because I'm also sort of streaming my desktop and stuff. Usually it doesn't take this long. Come on. It'll get there. Or it should. If it doesn't, if it like times out after a little while, then we can just refresh. Oh, download complete. Yeah, like it lost connection. So it downloaded it onto my computer. And if it does that, then what you can do is you just go into your downloads folder and then you just transfer it over. So I'll show you how to do that now. Might as well. So in your downloads folder, it saves it down there. And then I have a little, I'm on a Mac, you'll see. So one of the network or one of the devices I've connected to is a microbit. It's called microbit there. And so what I do is I just take this and drag it down and over there. So similar to, let's say like a USB key, but I don't know if A lot of people use USB keys now. How you would upload a project onto your Google Drive, I guess. I don't know. Drag and drop. Let's try that again. There we go. So it should have worked. So it sort of just unplugs itself, plugs itself back in, does a little reset on the back there, and then should go. What's wrong with my computer? What's wrong with my microbit? It's not this microbit, is it? All right, we'll come back to it if it's not working the next little bit. It should work, I swear. I was just using it. Let's try this microbit. Always have a backup. All right, so nothing on this one. So let's try this again. This is the one thing. Oh, there it is. There we go. You can see it. Yippee. He's getting embarrassed there for a second. And then SRHacks. All right, but so it worked, yippee, but let's get back into it. So this is one of the things that when you have to troubleshoot when you're building your project, and with all of your stuff, all of your coding and everything being virtual, is you don't have that opportunity to really test it out on the microbit, which is, to me, a little bit good, because then you don't have to worry about all those little technical pieces or whatever. If it works, if it in terms of like downloading and that sort of thing, do you have the most up-to-date version, that sort of stuff. So that's one thing to really, you can be happy about, I guess. But that's just between you and me. Don't tell SRHacks I said that. Okay, so so we can have this basic, project. From here, we can add in some other things. So like I was doing, so let's on button A pressed, we can have it, showcase a little animal here. So we can either design our own little animal, or if we want to, we can use one of the created ones. So they've got little icons in here. All right. So I'm going to just show you a check mark, because I think a check mark is really good for like how things are moving in your project. You can use it as like almost a debug purpose. Like if this is where we expect this to happen, we need to sort of show that that's happening. And so when I press this, we should get a little check mark there, and then SRHacks is going to keep going because it's forever going. All right. So, might be nice also to have like a little bit of a pause, so you can sort of had a chance to see that. So again, that pause is just in here. So we can drag that and pause for MS. For those science people out there, does anybody remember what an MS is? Milliseconds, right? So 500 milliseconds is about half a second. So there's 1,000 or mille for those of you French speakers, milliseconds in 1 second. So you can have that in there, 1 second, 2 second, 5 seconds. But if those are the programmed ones, but if you want to have it for 750 milliseconds, go for it. You can type in whatever you want. If you want to have it 10,000, go for it. That's so It allows you to just explore and create with that. Okay, so these are some, like, again, sort of basic projects that you can get into, and those sort of things. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention, or maybe it was mentioned at the beginning, if you do have questions throughout, write them in the Q&A section. I think that's probably the best place to put them, and I'll try to address that at the end. I'm here all day. Well, maybe not all day, but I'm here to help you and support you. So if you have questions, put them in that Q&A section, and I'll try to address them whenever I can. If they're about things, again, I see that there's a lot of other questions being answered in there. So yeah, go for it. But if there's anything that is in particular with what I'm doing, then feel free to ask them, and my co-host will interrupt me, and I can answer that to the best of my ability. Okay, so sorry. So those are some basic things just to get started with. You can push buttons, you can do stuff. Another thing in terms of input, we can on shake, if it's been shaken, if we are tilting it, those sort of things. The light level, we can explore with those. So what I was going to do is I was going to talk a little bit about the engineering design process, and then we'll come back to doing a little bit more of that. So, or I was going to talk a little bit about the Do Your Bit challenge, which I think is pretty cool. And then hopefully this doesn't go to the beginning. And then we'll talk about the engineering design challenge and how it could be useful. So what is Do Your Bit? So Do Your Bit is, it brings together the microbit as well as the UN Global Sustainability Goals. And so there, by 2030, if you haven't heard about them already, you probably, or I would be surprised if you hadn't heard about them in your classroom nowadays, but there's 17 goals that the UN has sort of agreed upon in terms of what we can do better for the planet and the people, and the flora and the fauna and the water and everything, by 2030, what we can do to improve. And so we are how can we do that with using the microbit? And so there's so many different ways we can do this. And so we'll talk about a few of those here today, but first I want to talk about, so with a goal in mind, or with a sort of an aspiration in mind, well, how can you get there? How, what can we do to try to achieve what you're working on? And you're not necessarily going to work and address the whole goal, but there might be small little parts of that goal that you'll be able to work on. So what does that mean? So using the engineering design process, you will be able to think about your project and come up with ideas. So first of all, we have to come up with what's our goal, what is our what's the problem that we're thinking about. So for us, we're going to be looking at goal number 3, so healthy living and well-being. So you can think about, around your house, around your neighborhood, around your school, your library, community, whatever. You might see a problem or an issue, or a way that you can sort of think about people and be able to support them with that. And then the idea is to come up with solutions, and no solution is too crazy. And it's not just I don't mean to build out a solution. I mean, let's move away the tech for a moment. Let's take out, a notepad, sticky notes, and just start brainstorming ideas. And so, what's an issue that you might see in your neighborhood, for example, if you wanted to just throw a couple down in the Q&As, and we can talk about them if you want. But, I know that, right now, a lot of people living and working from home, time management might be something, or work-life balance. I don't know. I know that a lot of you are your students, but like, maybe not work-life balance, but like school life balance might be something that might come up, or mental health is often another thing. So what are some of the things that we can think about, that we can, come together and or what can you think about and brainstorm on, and come out with a few solutions that you might think to it, and mental health is huge, but maybe try to think of one aspect of mental health that would be something that you're thinking about, or an issue that you might be seeing. And then when you have all of those ideas out there, those solutions, then start to think about designing, or select a particular design. Number one works because of this. Number two, we can't really use this. Number three, I really like this one, but I don't think that the solution would be viable. Again, usually in engineering, there sometimes are there are constraints, right? You have time constraints, money constraints, resources constraints, personnel constraints, those sort of things. And so I guess you have to think about those too, because there's a certain timeline that you have for this particular challenge as well. And so what can you and your team come up with in over the next number of weeks? I think it was 2, if I remember correct, or yeah, 2 weeks. Okay. So, so now that you have, a design, and you've thought about a solution that you can come up with, well, let's go ahead and start to build that model out, build that prototype. So that's the building of the physical pieces that I've been talking about, as well as trying to program it out, and through that building process, it's like, the first thing I like to do is like, step one, what are we supposed to do from our start? What's the next thing that we want to do? So not just like, building out the project, but like, this is the first step, that's the second step, that's the third step, and always making sure, okay, this in a stepwise fashion, and also testing it throughout. You'll see that there's this test and evaluate option as well, or aspect to it. You always want to test and like, does this work? Does it not work? How can I improve this? And so as you build on more and more layers to it, you can start to see how you can optimize your project, as well as, add more onto it. And then eventually you're going to share that out. So you're going to make that report, make that video, and share that out. And that I think I'm excited to see those out there. The one thing I know, that sometimes you can get to a point where you're like, you have these huge aspirations in what you're doing, but the one thing that I'd try to encourage learners to do is, let's get our MVP. So what is that? An MVP? That's our minimum viable product, or project, or whatever, however you want to use your P, but MVP. So what can you want to showcase something in 2 weeks. And if your idea is going to take you longer than 2 weeks, then maybe you might need to cut back a few ideas or a few things, but you can also put that in like stretch goals, right? Or next steps type of thing. And so get it to a point where you have like, okay, this is my MVP. Whatever I have after this as steps, those are bonuses. And those are, it's nice to have those bonuses, nice to have those goals to get there. All right. So what did I do, or how did I encourage my students to do this? So I had my students, they did a couple slides for me. And so I'll sort of summarize them. And so, the students shared with me that they ended up wanting to do this Do Your Bit challenge to sort of get a better understanding of the field of engineering. So that worked through the engineering design process, as well as they wanted to learn some coding skills. But then the other thing that they also thought about too is, they were very passionate about societal issues, right? And so what can they do with engineering? Because engineering is not just about like, hey, let's build, interesting projects, like let's go to the moon, which, is super cool. I'm, super excited about the Canadian who's going. They were announced this past week. But what are some other things that we can that can be done with engineering? And so, for example, these two young ladies came up with something called the microcom. And so the idea behind the microcom is that it's sort of this all-in-one device. It's this all-in-one device with various coping mechanisms. So it's got sort of this emotional, so they were thinking about, global goal number 3, healthy living and well-being, and they were sort of focusing on a little bit of the two aspects of, the well-being. So they have that emotional check-in, how you doing? They also had there's this technique that they had read up about. It's called box breathing. And so where you sort of like, you calm your breathing, you sort of a little bit of a meditation opportunity. They also built this little bit of a fidget toy in there, and then they added into a game. Oh, sorry, I've got a friend in here. Excuse my second. Ok. Ok, vas-y. En haut, je vais faire ça. Non, so they also added in a game feature in there, because that was one thing that they had sort of were excited about. So yeah. All right. So then how did so they sort of got into that mental health. They talked about global goals, but it was a little bit from a different perspective. Because again, this was, like in the middle of the pandemic, everything was at home. We were teaching virtually, and so they were, one might say they could have been struggling with this, but I think they sort of embraced it and went from there. And this on the side here is sort of an example of that, that's brainstorming that they came up with, that not necessarily the MVP, but the steps that they were coming up with, right? So if we go back to my little post-it, what steps are we going to have? So they had, the front, what we have in the back, what sort of aspects they're using. So they use the buttons, A, B, and then A, B together to sort of navigate around. They also use the obviously the CPU, but the accelerometer, because they needed it for the accelerometer was part of their game. And so they initialize, like button A initiates the breathing guide, button B is the fidget spinner, A, B initiates the game, and then accelerate using the accelerometer, or the they were playing the game based on that, and then they were using the LEDs for all of the particular parts of it. So you can see how outlining those things will give you an idea. Okay, let's get this thing done, check mark it, and it gives you that sort of to-do list there. So where to find some of the more resources on the Microbit website, which I'll share a link, not right now, but I can share a link later, or I'll share a link with SRHacks, and they'll be able to post it on the Discord on their website. So there'll be, link for there, link for my YouTube, link to the dashboard that we saw there with all of the good stuff on MakeCod that they have to go from there. So a lot of good stuff. And what I wanted to do next is sort of like showcase a few other things or a few other ideas of being able to bring some of this stuff together on with the microbit. You'll have to remind me how much longer do I have, do you think? Maybe 20 minutes?
You have around 20 minutes.
Okay. And again, I'll try to leave about 10 minutes for questions and answers at the end. If people have questions or answers for me or for SRHacks, then we'll have an open platform for that. But yeah, so that's, again, here I'm just showcasing a sort of a basic project. But let's go back to our home. So up here on the right, oh, actually, just before I want to do that, I want to showcase. So another thing with coding that's really important is commenting. Commenting is super important because when you get it, like I can look at this and there's only like, 8 blocks in here. I can sort of read it and understand it. But when you start getting to have like 80 blocks, it can be pretty complex. And so what you want to do is you want to comment this. And like sometimes comments are like more important than the code itself, because if it doesn't work, then it's sometimes something that someone can read and try to understand and be like, okay, I sort of understand it. This is how we can maybe fix it, sort of thing, right? Because you're going to be working with, through your projects, and that Discord, they're going to be mentors in there to be able to help you with some of your project, your building aspects, or your coding aspects. And so sometimes just explaining your code will help you walk through it and see what errors you might have that might come up. And the same sort of thing with commenting is when you start commenting on stuff, then you can start to see, okay, this is what I'm doing. This is what the project needs to do here. And so the way to comment in MakeCod is I'm just going to right click on using my mouse here, or if you're on a Mac, a 2-finger click. And there's this little option here that comes up, and you can either duplicate, which is pretty cool if you want to take a block of code and use it again, if you've built something up like this. But again, that's enough of that. But add a comment. And so in add a comment, there's this little pop-up here to show that there's like a little post-it note, and you just click on that and you can add a comment. So at the start of the program, say hello to the user, or whatever, right? And so again, that sort of just helps you and others to understand it. But again, like something like that is pretty self-explanatory. But if I go over to one of my other projects, let's just go over to something a little bit more complex. Here, I think this one was a little bit more complex. Or might be a step up. It might not be super complex, but it gives you an idea maybe of some of the things that you can. Maybe this one won't be too complex if it loads. All right, well, it's loading. Let's see if there's another one. Oh yeah, this one will be, let's try this one as well. So while that one's loading, maybe we can see if this one's loading. And actually, yeah, okay. Well, they're loading, they're almost there. I wanted to show you some of the things that you can get into around, again, around the house. So here you can see that I got into some stuff with variables. So variables, just to quickly talk about variables, they're like holders or containers for stuff. So when I explain it, I usually talk about a lunchbox. You have a lunchbox that can hold stuff in it. The lunchbox is always the same, and you can have a lunchbox for different types of things if you want to store numbers or names, for example. And so this one is counting. So we're doing some counting. And so the idea is with this one, we can use this to count up certain numbers. So if I wanted to, add a comment, so we're gonna, this is going to count and display from 1 to 5 on the LED. Sort of thing. So this, again, very simple little comment, but a simple little comment can help, and in plain English or in plain French can explain what the code is doing, and that way you can be like, oh, okay, that's what's going on, type of thing. And once you start explaining it, it'll be a little bit better. Okay, so I actually I want to stop sharing my screen, because I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the other things that you can do, and I'll reshare again in a few seconds. But we had talked about the microbit. So again, here's the microbit. We have the stuff scrolling. We have those buttons that we can do stuff with. But there's also, with these connections down here, we can do some more stuff with it. So we can add in different things. If you have LEDs, for example, you can add in lights to have as an external thing. But you can also have different inputs. So sometimes you can have like a button, and if you don't have like other buttons like this, you can make your own button. So this, for example, is a button that I made just using aluminum foil and cardboard and an elastic band and some like foam type of thing. But you can have anything in here. And so the idea is, when a connection is made, you can have something on here that, when a connection is made, or when this conducts electricity across here, or we just had some toilet tube paper, toilet paper roll, oh my gosh, toilet paper roll or paper towel roll, with a few, with some aluminum foil or something conductive, right? So it's about, what's conductive, what's not conductive, can really help you with this, to be able to make those connections. And then we can program it to, when that connection is created, if we're trying to create something here, or when that connection is broken. So if we had something that was connected across here and it got hit off, so something's balancing, or you'll see one of my videos, I did some target practice with my son. We had a few of them standing up, or just one of them, and once you hit it off, the connection was broken, so it was no longer a current, or a closed circuit. It was an open circuit, and when it was an open circuit, it counted, and so we were able to get points that way. So that was more for a game, but again, thinking about healthy living and well-being, what can we do, and how can we utilize maybe these sorts of things, some very simple maker type projects at home, and that sort of thing. So how would this work in terms of, actually, yeah, well, I'll quickly share my screen again, if I can find it, and I'll just show you where you would find that block within sorry, I had to pick the right screen, where you would find that block within the MakeCod platform. but then, yeah, after that, we'll open it to discussion or questions, whatever. Yeah. Oh, and I didn't mention where we found variables. So in the other program that I showed where variables we were using, so here is variables, you just gotta make it and then you can use that. But down here is pins. So pins are those connections at the bottom, if you're able to see my video there, this connection at the bottom there. And so if we're reading or writing, we'll be able to see if that is a connection is there. The other option is in this input. PO is, or P0 is pressed, P1 is pressed. You can also use it like this. So yeah, there's really a lot of things that you can do with these, you know, in terms of the different aspects of it. So, so yeah, there's this one as well as this one is writing, so that's sending output out. But if you're just having a closed circuit and using buttons, using it as you know, buttons like I was just showcasing, you want to use the read, and so you want to do either a digital or analog. Well, if you're just looking for is it open or closed, you want to use digital, because that's how that one works. Whereas analog is really looking, you can think about digital and analog as in like digital is a light switch, it's either on or off, whereas an analog is like a dimmer. So it's either on or like off, or then you can gradually turn it on and then brighter and brighter and brighter. And so what is, you know, what is the reading type of thing? But those, you know, again, I'm sort of giving you those hints. Obviously, we'd be here all day or all week if we went through all these different parts. But for now, let's just, I'll stop it there to hopefully give you some ideas, and then, yeah, go from there.
That was wonderful. Thank you so much, Andrew, for this input. So right now we'll be opening the floor for a couple of questions. So if you have any questions, just put them in the Q&A here on Zoom, and we'll get to them. I guess I could also ask some myself while we see if anyone in the chat has any questions. Andrew, based on the resources that you mentioned earlier, those links to your other projects, these also highlight like these like make physical constructions of these like household item things that you were showing earlier today?
Absolutely, yeah. Very like there are tons and tons of other things out there that you can purchase, like breakout boards and stuff like that. But it's more like it can get pretty expensive type of thing, and so we want to be very, you know, conscious of how much money we're spending on these. And so I like to do things on the cheap, as they say. So cardboard is your friend, recycling bin is your friend, and so yeah, you'll see some of the projects that I've done are, you know, straight out of the recycling bin, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So then we'll be sharing these links once Andrew makes it available to us, to you all on the Discord server, and potentially maybe the website as well. Just a quick question someone asked here. So just to go over, the purpose of the competition is to, you're not trying to create something revolutionary, although it might be later down the line, who knows? But the whole point is that you're looking at a challenge, which is to create a product or a tool that helps the user live a healthier life, or that it makes the world a safer place. So one of the examples to make the world a safer place will be something like creating a little game that teaches you about pollution and how to reduce your carbon footprint. So it's really up to you. So just like Andrew mentioned, the idea first is to kind of sit down, look at the problem and think, and then organize your development process so you can create not only your software, but a software that fits neatly with an attachment that you will then create as a complement to your software. Here we have some other questions. So for comments, I guess I could also say it's the explanations don't need to be that detailed. I think, Andrew, I guess you can correct me if I'm wrong, but a good comment is something that's very simple and to the point. So if you have a block that does A, you just say this block does A. You don't need to tell us in the comment what every single block, the function of every single block. Just give us like an overall idea. And for
Yeah.
those, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to agree with you that like if a block of 3 or 4 pieces of code, like, you know, it's hard to say blocks when you're talking about block coding, but like, yeah, you know, like when it's press button A, what does it do? And there's a whole bunch of code in there, then yeah, depending on how big it is, if if you've got 20, 30 things in there, then maybe chunk it into things, but you don't need to say individually what piece it's doing. Like this block is displaying this block is counting this like that gets to be too many comments. But chunking things, because it helps you to like keep track of stuff when your project starts to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. It's like, okay, what section is doing this? And then you might have things that are like counteracting each other, because like you might have forgotten that you had on button A, you have it do this, and then on button A somewhere else, you're like, oh, it's not going to work. And like the code is smart that it will, like the platform MakeCod will not allow you to have 2 button A options. So that's good. But then add AB and like, okay, what happens when you do this? So yeah, I'd say you don't have to break it down for everything. So that's good.
Yep. Thank you. And also another question is in terms of prices. So the top 5 finalists will be receiving a physical microbit. So even if you have a team of 4, all 4 of your team members will each be receiving a microbit to take home. And the plus side with that is that if you do become a finalist, when you go into the SRHack Off, which is the finalist event, you will be able to then showcase your actual physical attachment with the actual microbit attached to it. So then you'll be able to display it for everyone to see. And if you're for some reason outside Toronto and can't make it, again, this event is hosted. You're able to attend this event virtually as well. So you'll be able to show your ideas in that manner as well. And if that's the case, you will also be getting the microbit in the delivery, although the time of arrival might vary depending how far you are. Okay, I think these were all the Q&As. I think afterwards, I just want to reiterate that if you have any other pressing questions, or if someone's watching this in the recording, feel free to reach out to us on the Discord server on the general questions if you have any other concerns or questions about your project or things like that. And also keep an eye on the schedule when we will have drop-in sessions where you'll be able to talk to a mentor that will be able to guide you specifically on your project and help you with any hurdles that you're trying to overcome. Okay, I think we've reached the end of this workshop, and I want to give a big thanks to Andrew for donating his time on the weekend for helping us out and for giving you guys a good reference to get started on this project. I think I speak for all of us that we're very excited to see what you come up with, and we can't wait to share this with everyone else as well. Thank you so much, Andrew, and thank you everyone for attending.
Are you trying to have like relaxing beats in the background?
I am.
I can't hear it. I think you forgot to share system audio.
My mistake.
There we are.
Thank you for that.
Because I noticed at the beginning, I was like, anyway, doesn't matter. It's all good now. Well, let's stop.
Thank you,
this
Andrew.
recording. Yeah, no problem.